we're back.
So back.
Hopefully we had some sponsors and there were some good commercials for everybody.
I would like Trident Layers. This is not a plug. I would love to have Trident Layers as a sponsor at some point, and that way we can say we're getting paid in Trident Layers.
Ooh, I love it. Mm-hmm. All right, back to the details for our young listeners.
Yes.
So, all right, so you go to law school, and there's a lot of people that talk about law school. There's blogs that talk about the horrors of law school. Give us kind of a general overview of your perception of law school.
Okay, so my perception of law school coming in was it's going to be very scary. I'm not going to know what's happening. I'm going to be very tired and stressed, and I'm going to learn a lot. All of that was very true. But there are some media, like the Paper Chase, where movie, I'm sure you know it. It's like they browbeat students. I never had a professor like that. I'm sure there are some terrible professors out there. Did you have one?
I had that, yes.
Oh man.
I still remember to this day, very first class, torts. And professor, does his introduction, and I can't remember the name of the case. I'm not that
Paul's
astute.
Graph. It was definitely Paul's
No,
Graph.
It wasn't Paul's Graph. It was even worse. It was a case that had to deal with an individual who was going to break up a fight between dogs, and with a stick, accidentally hit the other dog owner.
Right.
And so the question was, effectively, is he liable for hitting the other dog owner?
Absolutely.
And so the case, the language of the case, is that he had a rod. That is the exact word that was used. He had a rod that he used to break up the dogs. And so the very first question, he turned to a gal named Stephanie, and he says, Mrs., I won't say her name because I don't want to embarrass her now, 20 plus years later, what is a rod?
No.
And
really?
Oh, yes.
Oh, no.
And it turns out that at the time, there was a specific definition of a rod, and it was a stick of a certain diameter, and poor gal, she had no idea, but she just presumed it meant a pole, and he continued to lambaste her for not looking up the definition of a rod in trying to interpret the case.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Did she cry?
No, she didn't cry, but
good for her.
I kind of wanted to cry.
I would have cried. I would have cried.
I wanted to cry for her because I felt like that was unfair.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's awful, one, but was the 90s, early 2000s, 90s. When did you go to law school?
97.
97, so year after I was born.
So
Shout out.
Note to first-year law students or those that are just starting law school, if you're looking at cases, make sure you truly understand the definition of the words in the case before you start answering questions.
I would agree. Yeah, no, but I mean, that segment of law school has not changed. The brief the case, be ready to discuss it, and you will be cold called at some random point during the year. So that has not changed at law school.
So do you have any advice then for what it takes to get through law school?
Yes. Quimby. No, specifically any... Man, there's so much. I will tell you that the greatest asset for me in law school was having a legal background going into law school, because the first semester for so many people is understanding the legalese, because you are learning a whole new language. You're learning a little bit of Latin that you may or may not use on a day-to-day basis if you're pretentious.
Quid pro quo.
Yeah.
Nunc pro tunc.
Oh, man. There's one I always love to say, and I can't remember it. For reps ipsa loquitur. There's tons you're going to learn, and you should know them. But again, you're going to learn plaintiff, defendant, pro se, deposition, subpoena. Like, there's just so many words you don't know and how they apply and how to use them, that the first semester really is grinding your teeth and learning that new language. And so you are learning the language while also trying to learn the rules of, like, torts, contracts. At least that's what I took. And property, yeah, exactly. Those foundational courses that you really do need to take in criminal law for you to have any understanding of what you're getting into in the years to going ahead. So the first part for me, I think for everybody that comes into law school, is try to have a legal background, try to work in a law office like I did. Like I ended up I went from legal assistant to paralegal. Thank God. I mean, that certainly helped me.
Okay, but obviously the majority of people
They
have
don't.
that experience. They don't
Right.
have that luxury.
Right.
But what about simple things that they could do, like study groups?
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I could have had that. So in 2020, when I started, it was COVID times. I started in August of 2020, and they had a hybrid format, but meaning you could go in person if you wanted, but you'd wear a mask. And oftentimes the professor was on Zoom, so you were in a classroom with the professor on the board. And at a certain point, you're like, I might as well just stay in my pajamas at home if I'm going to get cold called. So study groups weren't a real big thing for law students in 2020 and even 2021. Nowadays, though, absolutely find a group of people. And like, they don't have to be the smartest kids. I would try to get with the smartest kids, but just anybody to just push ideas off of about the law. Like, I was fortunate. I made some friends. I'm not totally a loser. I made some friends in the first semester of law school, and certainly him and I, Jordan Kendall, shout out. Me and him were study buddies, and I just needed somebody to push ideas off of, push concepts of law off of, and cases, and it certainly helped. And I would advocate for even bigger study groups. But it depends on how you learn. If you're do-it-yourself kind of person and you don't really need that, and you kind of find people get in the way, so be it. But I would advocate at least trying to get somebody involved in your studying early on. And that way you can share outlines, you can share notes, you can get caught up, you can just, it helps. It just helps.
You raise a great point, which is outlines.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I benefited from was having friends that went to law school before me. So they had already done all the outlines.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe I saw a couple of those
Sure.
beforehand.
Yep, sure. And there, depending on the professor, some of them don't like when you share outlines. Know the professor, I guess. But for me, I was fortunate to have met some people at law school that had taken classes that were a year above me. They definitely, like, I saw outlines that were made pre-hand. I know that there are organizations at school, like there's a couple of groups, the Federalist Society, and some, like any real legal club that you can join will have an outline bank that probably can help you. So, and it's probably, every professor probably has one that somebody has put into a library catalog of outlines for that club. Or you can just talk to somebody that's taken the course before, and they'll likely give you an outline that they've made.
Obviously, the outline does not take the place of reading the cases and doing the mental exercise necessary to understand everything.
No.
But usually those outlines give you the salient points, the key takeaways from either the case or the issue.
Yep, absolutely. So for me, and the way I studied was, I didn't touch an outline. Because I'll be honest, I didn't make outlines until like a month before finals. I didn't really start touching those because like Joe said, it's not something that teaches you the law. Reading the law teaches you the law. And I was absolutely gung-ho on briefing every case, taking avid notes on it. Like, I really, coming into this, I'd never taken school so seriously until I got to law school. And it was because I cared. And it was learning stuff that I actually was very passionate about, which was, man, all this stuff is very interesting. And we're talking about conflict and resolution and justice, and like that stuff, man, getting me chills right now just thinking about it, because it was something I actually cared about. I didn't care about undergrad that much, really didn't. I could slide by, and I got okay grades. I loved law school. It was hard and it was difficult, and I'm better for it. But I loved learning. I loved everything about it. But for me, it was brief the case, read the case verbatim. You don't have to memorize it, but you certainly have to take away the points. And there's a way to, I forget the exact note acronym that people use, but it's the analysis, it's the explanation, and then conclusion. And
IRAC?
The IRAC, but that's for writing. It was more of like how to analyze a case and then break it down into bite-sized pieces to regurgitate. But learning the fact pattern, learning how it applies, learning what the rule and what they're trying to teach you is, because there's a point to every case you read. The point is, you are supposed to take away, and either like it's an outlier or it's showing you where the wall off for the law is. Or there may be some stupid railroad case that shows you how terrible the law used to be. So stuff like that. But reading it, taking great notes on it, but putting it in a way that you have all the facts so you can regurgitate it if you're cold called. So like, in any class at any time, it'd be like, so can somebody lead us through the Paul's graph case? Sometimes they do a random name generator, or they just have a list and they just go down it, or they just ask for volunteers. But a cold call traditionally is they pull a name and they go, is Matt Story here? And then you go, yeah. And then I never had to stand up, but I understand. Did you have to stand up in law school?
I had to stand up.
Oh, thank God I didn't have to do that. I'd have been okay. I'm okay at public speaking, but like that would have been just needless horror for a lot of people. Would have been so bad because it's already bad enough getting cold called, not knowing the questions asked of you, and you are a law student, so you don't know the law. You just don't. And
more importantly, you don't know what the professor is going to think is important.
Right. Yes.
You know what you thought was important as you read the case.
Oh man, dude, I'm getting a flashback to my constitutional law class, where I messed up a cold call on Dred Scott.
Oh.
Yeah. Ooh. And this tall white boy, I absolutely flubbed it. I knew the case. I read the case. I know what Dred Scott is. It's just I got absolutely caught up in trying to sound smart that I did not articulate the way the professor could understand. And he's like, what was the takeaway? And I was like, they're saying that they're not citizens of the states. And instead of saying that they were saying black people weren't citizens. That's what Dred Scott decided. I just didn't say that because I wanted to sound intelligent. And he just went, of the states? Like kind of looked at me like, are you, I think you're saying something, but I don't know if you're saying something. And so immediate embarrassment. Great professor. Shout out Elon Werman. Shout out to you. That was a great con law class you taught. But I absolutely flubbed it. So you're going to flub it. That's going to happen. But the point is that you can at least know the facts and you can at least understand the case enough to talk about it. Like I knew what I was saying, I just didn't say it right. And that's going to happen a lot. So that was important to me, along with there is services that allow you to do really quick summaries of cases called like Quinby. There's plenty more, and there's AI you can use as well.
I was gonna say now we've got AI. You can probably throw a case into ChatGPT and it'll tell you everything.
You can watch a Quinby video on most cases nowadays of like letter law, and it will give you a 5-minute synopsis of the facts, and it'll give you the takeaway stuff, the black letter law that you need to know. Black letter law is just quite literally, here's what the law is, period. There's no ambiguity. You'll get those rules. And Quinby was great for that. I'm plugging them because I used them religiously in law school. They were great about giving me briefs, articulating the most important points, and you'll save a lot of time. But I don't say this without saying you need to still read the case. You still need to know the facts because Quinby will give you the shortcut to the case. And yeah, you might be able to answer the questions from the professor on what the main point is, but you won't know the actual facts all the way through in a way that is redundant so you memorize or have a way of being malleable with it. So that's the first part is notes. I would take constant notes, and they weren't always great, but I would take constant notes, a running doc. I would then follow up with Quinby and have Quinby up in the middle of class because when you're cold called, you can still have your notes in front of you. So I would have Control F ready on my laptop if need be, because why wouldn't you? It's the day and age. You're never not going to have Control F. And then you have to be confident enough in yourself and the way you study to be able to speak, because that's what lawyering is a bunch of talking. It's a bunch of talking in many different scenarios.
Okay.
And that's all the same for you, right? That's all you did. Brief work, you did notes, you did the same old that I just talked about.
It is amazing how 20 years later law school is still the same. Well, and we both went to the same law school, so
shout out ASU.
Yes, shout out.
Sun Devils up, Forks up, baby.
So, okay, so we kind of have general how to survive, how to get through your classes. In my law school experience, non-COVID, we had various different organizations, clubs. I was on one of the journals, Jurimetrics, shout out. Do you think that that's helpful for law students?
I do. I have to admit, I was neither in a law review or a journal. Gasp. I did mock trial. I did a bunch of moot court competitions. I probably should have done at least some law review because I'm an okay writer. I'm not a amazing stellar writer. Joe's a great writer. I'm a good advocate. I'm a very good speaker. I do really well on my feet. I'm quick. and I know the rules in the courtroom fairly decently. I've got a lot to go, but I'm very confident in my abilities to figure things out that way. But as far as law review and journal, there are some perspectives on if you should do it or not. I didn't do it because I just thought it'd be awful to do law school and have to write projects on top of it. And I'd rather do something that's more practical and tangible. Not that writing law reviews is not, but nowadays I've have professors that say, you know, law review is just kind of free labor for professors to get their stuff edited and to push it out. So
Yeah, I'm going to give you a different spin on it.
please.
So for Geometrics, I was production editor, and that involved interfacing not only with the personnel at ASU that were helping with the journal, Professor K in particular, but it was also interfacing with the individuals that were submitting articles. We would then run it through our series of editors who would go through, make suggestions, maybe have changes that they would ask for, and then we would re-interface with the professor and try to get through those changes, or the authors to try to get through those changes. So it was, for me as a production editor, it was more about the systems that were in place and learning how to communicate with individuals that, for lack of a better phrase, were egoists. You know, they clearly thought that they had something important to say,
Right.
and were putting it on paper for everyone to read.
Well,
So
and that's definitely the positive aspect of it. And again, I say it like free labor for law school professors. It is, but again, the point is that you are put in a position where you are reading legalese, you're reading stuff that's written by people that are competent, they're professors, or at least they should be, and you are learning something from that. So, I mean, the point is like you should always be doing something that's making you more valuable, more of an asset. And that sounds like a rise and grind kind of mentality. Like I wake up at 4 a.m., then I take a cold shower. Like you should just be always doing something in law school. You're
yeah.
paying a lot of money. Get everything out of it.
yeah, the takeaway there is that idea. One, you're interfacing with other classmates, so you're getting that camaraderie,
Yes.
potentially
Networking.
assistance and networking, which we'll talk about at some point in the profession is important.
Very.
But then you also have that differentiator on your resume when you are applying somewhere. And I know it sounds silly, but if I have two resumes in front of me that are fairly identical, but one of them happened to be on Geometrics, my interest is now piqued.
No doubt, because you can definitely go, well, they've written a little bit more than you. I don't disagree at all, and especially there are some big law firms that when you go to apply, like for a summer associate position, will say or law journal or law review, either required or preferred, and so like definitely enhances your ability to get jobs. So I would advocate for that. You can do both. You can do mock trial and you can do journal. There's so many options and so many clubs. Like the journal and review are absolutely going to make you a better writer. The moot court and mock trial are going to make you a better litigator, and doing them together will make you a god. I think. I don't know. I've never seen it done, but I'm sure people have.
So let's kind of step back now, because we've kind of covered the law school experience, except for one, what I think is a very important factor, and that is your summers after each year. So your 1L summer, your 2L summer, and for us, it was typically going through these interviews that were held on campus with various different law firms, usually local, that would interview you for a summer position. And then there were some that would actually come from Chicago. There were a couple that came from LA. Did you participate in that, and is there any value to it?
Absolutely, there's value in it, and I absolutely participate in it. It is it feels like a necessary kind of process you have to be a part of in law school. It's referred to as OCI, which is on-campus interviews, and it is the time of the year, like Joe just said, where they bring in a bunch of law firms. And if you're at a really prestigious school with a bunch of alumni, oh man, you will not believe who shows up for OCI. But basically what it is it's on-campus interviews. They'll post up, like we'll say like Gamage and Burnham. I've seen their names, Ballard and Spar, Gallagher Kennedy would do it. Snell and Wilmer, they'll get a conference room in one of the law school offices in downtown at Phoenix campus for ASU. It's a tall building with like, I think there's 6 or 8 floors, somewhere in there. But they'll post up in a conference room, and if they like you, or at least they like your resume, you'll come in for an interview with 1 to 2 lawyers, and it's great.
So, okay,
You should absolutely do that.
To make that clear, so it's not that you just get to go interview with any of the law
No.
firms you want.
No.
So it's kind of a process where you apply, and then they decide if they're going to interview you.
That's right. So you apply, and then they say, hey, then you'll get a post. We would get an email from Career Services saying, hey, it's OCI season. Here's who's going to be here. If you fit the qualifications or you want to apply. And again, the standards for the really high end firms are you ranked in your class? Are you what's your law review and journal participation? Like they want the creme de la creme to apply. So those ones you'll apply, and then if you fit the mold, they'll bring you in, and then you'll get interviewed. And I'll tell you that I interviewed with a state firm because I was interested in wills and trusts for a time. Interviewed with a nice woman. I won't name drop her because I can't remember her name, but did an interview with her, and everybody I talked to that does the interviews says it's great practice, even if you don't get the job, because there's only a limited amount of summer associate positions at any one time. But it is worth its weight in gold to put a face in front of other lawyers that are making decisions on hiring. That is always good, and then to leave a good impression with them. And then maybe you get hired in the spot to do the summer associate. But at the very least, you're getting experience talking about what your interests are, kind of figuring out if like what they're going to describe to you as big law, because you should be asking questions on what's your day-to-day like. How much time am I devoting to a summer associate position? What are the expectations? What kind of work will I be doing? Those kind of questions will absolutely help and guide you to figure out what kind of law you want to get into, because there's a big difference between the boutique law that Joe and I do and the big law that's out there, the suits law that's out there. So using the interview time to learn about the law and the practice of law is essential, I think, without having to go work in that to figure it out.
Now, when I first started interviewing during the summers, Google was just really starting to come into its own and was starting to steal lawyers from the big law firms. And so they created this culture of asking them, things like, you're in a room full of hay and I drop a needle. How do you find that needle in the haystack? Walk me through it.
Burn the hay.
That's the quickest way to do it, yes. Oh my goodness, but...
Oh, I think there's a similar question now for Google on a side note where it's like, you're shrunk to the size of an inch and thrown into a blender. How do you get out?
Jump.
That's the answer. I think that was on the internship.
And it's silly because, the hay question, and any of those really, it's not necessarily about the solution. It's how do you work through the problem? Because that's really what they're looking at is, are you a problem solver? And how do you problem solve? At least that was my takeaway.
Yeah, and I think that's the mentality like you should have anyways when you go into any interview is, again, that hunger. Are you hungry? Do you want to learn? And it's not like this, oh, I'm great at everything and you should hire me because I'm an asset. Like, no one expects a law student to act like that. And if you act like that, they're absolutely going to go, huh, and they're going to shut the door in your face because you don't know anything. As a first-year associate, you still won't know a lot that you need to know to be a great, great lawyer. You can be a good lawyer, but it is literally only time, unless your experience was you came in out of law school and the hottest thing since sliced bread and you were a genius lawyer. Though you are Mensa, so that might have been the case for you.
Yeah, of course. I went to interviews and they were on the ground bowing down to me.
I'm sure.
I asked them questions. They didn't ask me any.
Wow. Did you hire them?
I didn't find them worthy.
That's fair. So no, that the OCI stuff definitely happens, and it's definitely worth your time to apply. There's other ones. There's diversity initiatives that law schools will do where if you're a minority, you can apply for certain positions at big law firms. That may be changing with the new administration. So we'll see how that happens. But Go ahead.
And to that, the other part is you're not stuck with just the OCI
No.
during your summers.
Nope.
One of the things that I always tell people, in general, in the law profession, is it's not what you know, it's who you know. And there are a lot of jobs out there you might not think about that require a lawyer or a law degree.
Mhm.
And those are in-house jobs. Those are working for HBO, doing their copyright clearances, working for somebody like Spotify to make sure that they're contracting correctly and paying the royalties appropriately.
Regulatory stuff. You can work for like a marijuana company doing state regulation stuff.
Or shout out to our court system. The courts regularly have interns.
Mhm.
And that's, at least in terms of during law school, you might not get your Court of Appeals or your Supreme Court, but there are the lower courts that require assistance, the federal courts in particular. Those are very, very helpful for getting some experience,
Mhm.
for interfacing with other lawyers, judges, and personnel. And again, I think it's just a valuable experience your first and second summers. Now, granted,
Mhm.
I don't know what your experience was and what your friends' experiences were, but generally, the mindset was your first summer was to try and get your foot in the door somewhere and to get some good experience. Obviously, the higher up the prestige level you can get that first year, the better.
Mhm.
And then your second summer, you really were looking for what is my future job going to be? And so you were trying to find either a law firm that you wanted to get into, a law firm that represents the type of law that you wanted to do, or going outside that and going in-house somewhere as an intern with the idea that then you would continue working with that company after you graduate.
Yep.
Fair?
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I think that's absolutely the point, and I think you're dead on. The first one, the expectation is nothing. The expectation of you when you go into an internship is you are a mind that's malleable, and it's not that you know the law. You took torts, you took contracts, you took criminal law and property, and you took some other baseline bar classes. That does not make you a lawyer, and you're going to find that the jobs you're getting are not earth shattering. Some of you may be geniuses and get earth shattering work, but most of it is going to be mundane, edit a motion that is for like to like quash a subpoena or something, or something like write a complaint that we may or may not file. But it's meaningful work in that you are there learning the dialogue, communicating with your supervisor who's hopefully supervising you. But I think you're dead on with the second summer being more about what do I want to do? Is this where, and that's why I said in the interview process, ask the questions that are going to give you an idea of what your life will look like day to day. That is essential, because the worst thing you can do is blind yourself towards like, oh, I really want to do big law and I'm really excited about big law, and you do the summer associate work and you're like, man, that was busy work, that was hard. Okay. And then you do the second year and you get a little more work and you're like, oh, that was busy, but kind of fun and exhilarating. And then you get 5 years down the road as a lawyer and you realize you've worked 80, 90-hour weeks, and you might make a lot of money, and that might fill you with a lot of joy and fulfillment. Or you may go, wow, I am dead inside, and I wish I wouldn't have given away a lot of my life to this. You want to make sure you find that out as early as possible, because it is an investment.
Yeah, and it is important to ask questions, because one of the things, and it sounds corny, but don't be afraid to ask, what is your typical day like?
Mm-hmm.
Who is your typical client? What do you find most enjoyable about your job? What do you find least enjoyable about your job?
Yeah.
I think a lot of lawyers that do defense work or do corporate work, they'll probably tell you keeping track of their time. There are lawyers that do not like keeping track of their time. It is a hassle, it's time consuming, and you don't get paid to keep track of your time.
Right.
And for me, that was one of the things that pushed me away from doing defense work after 7 years.
You were a defense attorney?
Oh my God, yes. Yep, Med Mal Defense, loved it. Olson Janscherbacher, great experience, great firm, great lawyers. The most important thing that you learn from a job like that is how to be a good lawyer. And I don't mean how to be a good lawyer in terms of lawyering, because I did get that, but how to be a good person who is a lawyer.
Okay.
And, shout out Tom Bacher, Dan Yonch, Dwayne Olson.
Shout out Dwayne.
And then the junior partners at the time, Michael Barr Garth and Andy Rosenzweig, I learned so much stuff from them.
Yeah.
And it was more about how to be a human being and how to do the job and enjoy it.
And you hated billables?
And I hated billables.
I heard the word billables and I went, what is that? And one of my professors told me, and I went, that sounds like the worst thing I've ever heard of in my life for being attached to your career.
Yeah, you have a client who's effectively looking over your shoulder every minute. What are you doing now? What are you doing now?
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
We don't deal with that here. We're on contingency fee, but we'll get at that in a later episode. Back to the law school stuff. So I want to touch on a point, though, about outlining. So do your notes.
Oh, we're going back to law school.
We're going back to law school. We're going through outlining, and then you're going to take an exam, and the exam is going to be either open book if your professor's very nice, or it's going to be 1 page of notes if your professor's devious, or it's going to be no notes if your professor is evil. So learn what it's going to be early on, and that will absolutely change how you're going to approach it. With the advent of the laptop, the open book exam, you can control F through. And while that doesn't mean you're getting an A on it, you can certainly prep an outline that allows you to do that. And you can find the salient quotes that you want to use, the case citations that make sense. And that's what I would advocate for is when you get to the end of the section, you're going to get, at least at ASU, we got like 3 weeks of study time and matched with some essays that we're doing there for some other classes that you would take. But then you would take the exam, and that 3 weeks would have been devoted to outlining an outline that you can know where things are. You've looked at it at least once or twice before you've taken the exam, and then you have that baseline understanding of the cases you already read, and then you're just able to refresh it through that outline. So for me, that's what worked. I studied religiously. In 2020, I had nothing else to do too, so like that was a great benefit. But also, it also was a bit of a scary thought because everybody else was doing the same thing as me, and it was everything at law schools is on a curve. Every class you take, there's a percentage of people that can get an A plus. There's a percentage of people that get an A minus, B, and then C plus. And if you really mess it up, you get a D or an F. Like you really gotta really fuck things up to get a D or an F in law school. Like you gotta show up and look at the exam and go, well, don't know that one. Don't know that one. Yep. Oh, I'm good. Like that's a D or an F. Like really just attempting will probably get you a C. Like attempting an argument that's loosely based on the law. I had friends that got D's and some C minuses, and there's academic probation for people that go below a certain GPA requirement. But traditionally, they weight the GPAs upward when it comes to law school. So like your average student is usually around like a 3.2, 3.3. That's like the 50% threshold. I was right on that cusp. It was like 50%. I was like a 3.4, 3.5, I think. So that kind of stuff. There's a curve. The tests are open book usually, but they're worth 100% of your grade. And that's the most terrifying part of the whole process is going, oh my God, I did these cold calls. And some professors do like a 5% for how good your cold call ability is, but most do 100% weight on the final. And that can be terrifying. And you will find that everybody is as stressed as you at law school. And the best thing you can do is go to a study group with all those stressed people. Even though it sounds terrible, you should absolutely do it. Did you have study groups? Was that your thing, or were you a solo guy?
No, I had study groups, and I was lucky because I had a bunch of people that were much smarter than me, or at least they read better than I did. They wrote better than I did. And so for me, I was probably riding their coattails. They were very helpful to get me through law school.
Yeah.
Now, that said, I will tell you, so going back to undergrad college, I was a crammer. I was the kind of guy that did nothing more or less during the semester, and then when it came time for tests, I would cram the material for the tests. If it was just the final, I would cram the material for the final. I did not, typically, I did not do a lot of the work during the year. I'm going to tell you, law school, 180-degree difference. You got to do the work during the semester. There is no such thing as just showing up to class and then cramming for the final, because the level of information, the depth of information is so high that trying to cram for it is next to impossible.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to have a grasp on the language itself to argue with it, and that only comes from reading it, being able to talk about it a lot, and then writing it down again in a way you understand. you have to be able to re-articulate it based on new facts that the professor gives you, because you're not going to be asked what was the holding in the Paul's graph case. You're not going to be asked that. You're going to be asked, here's the fact pattern. What case law applies to this? Is this person at fault? Should this person go? What crimes were committed? Was my criminal exam. It was a long fact pattern. Identify all the crimes that were committed.
Yes.
And their threshold requirements, and if they breach those. Like, that's the kind of stuff, is applying it, which is different.
And by the way, just as a side note on that type of criminal test, so you get this massive fact pattern, a couple of different actors, and then you're asked to identify all of the crimes that were committed. I will tell you this. Not only analyze what crimes were committed and explain why they were committed, but then explain why certain ones that might fit the fact pattern were not violated.
Yep.
That's going to get you extra points.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And again, professors always word their problems to be like, yeah, there's an obvious answer, but are you good enough to see the hidden answer? Like, there's always that, like, there was a footnote. Did you catch a footnote? Did you catch the footnote?
Oh my gosh,
5? Footnote 5?
That killed me, because in reading the cases, footnotes to me were afterthoughts. I was like, I don't need to really worry too
Why
much
didn't they
about
just put it in
that.
the case? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, if it was important, they would have put it in the main text. Yeah, no, there are some professors that will harp on the footnotes, and not because they're being evil, but because they want you to understand, if it's in the opinion, it's important to the judge. Right. And so therefore, it is going to be important to you in analyzing the case. Whether ultimately it really matters is irrelevant, because you're going to be asked about it.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that's law school, really. I mean, the first year is all bar classes you're going to take. Bar classes meaning it's going to be on the bar exam. Expect it to be. So, again, base level courses, torts, contracts, property, criminal law. You'll take a research and methods class. They'll teach you how to use Westlaw and LexisNexis that you will have to use.
Civil procedure?
Civil procedure, which is all the rules for litigating a case in civil court. Criminal procedure, evidence, and then there was another one as well. There's tons. There's tons more, but those are first year, and then later on there's other bar exam classes. But the first year is set in stone. You have these foundational courses that you will take with all your peers. Flat, period. Second year, you get to choose.
Not completely.
No, you get to choose.
Well, no, because like for us, we did con law second year.
That was my second semester.
Oh, well, look at you, advanced.
I know. Well, con law was one of those base ones. So they do have a set schedule for the first year students. You take the same stuff, research methods, and then you do a advocacy class for the second semester. And that one has like an oral argument component to it. And one of mine was like arguing a trademark case, a trademark infringement case in the whatever Florida's circuit is. I forget what it was. Maybe 12. Well, I think that's Texas.
Oh.
No, I don't know. I don't know the circuits. Don't listen to me. But it was in Florida. And shout out. I'll give myself a little pat. Distinguished oral advocate, best in his class. Thank you.
Wow.
I got a B- in that class. I got the award during oral argument, best oral argument.
Okay.
So B- because my motion was not great at the midpoint. It was great at the end, but midpoint, because it's 50-50 for that. Percentage grade for your first draft, 50% for your final.
All right, so this isn't a counseling session.
All right, regardless. So the second year, like I was saying, we got to choose at ASU what we wanted to take, and I will always advocate for taking bar classes. I will always advocate it, because I took evidence, criminal procedure, I took wills and trusts, I took a bunch of stuff that, for me, you can take the side kind of elective classes, but I really wanted to get a head start on the bar exam early, because I'm the type of person that I have a good memory, but I really, really didn't want to rely on only studying for the bar exam, and I'll get to why the bar exam studying is so scary. But I wanted that foundation of, I took the class, I got it, my back pocket. But I also took some classes that were really fun. I took MLB Law and Society, where old Commissioner Bud Selig would come in, and we learn about how baseball impacted law and law impacted baseball and the color barrier and the use of arbitration stuff. Like, there's so much that you can do. I took a state attorney general's class where I was taught by the old attorney general, Terry Goddard. He was an attorney general in Arizona. He's amazing, great professor. And I took a class with a colleague of Joe and ours, Scott Palumbo. He does a medical malpractice class. That was great. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do. But I made a habit of at least taking 2 or 3 bar classes every semester, and then pushing in some electives on top, just because I wanted the bar exam scared me, and still scares me. I hate the bar exam. I understand it, but
We'll get to that.
we'll get there. So the second year and third year, you can choose what you want. Like Joe said, in the second semester or second summer, you should be deciding on trying to find a place that you want to work at, because the ideal outcome is you work there, they like you, they offer you a job when you graduate. That's the plan. A lot of people don't have that stuff lined up. So that's second year. Third year, oh man, same MO. You can choose whatever classes you want, as long as you meet the credit threshold and you meet whatever the requirements are. But but I'll tell you that the third year of law school to me is nearly worthless in a lot of aspects.
Oh, don't say that.
I am saying it because I feel as though, and I will hold this near and dear to my heart, that you could do 2 years of law school and then go into like a full year residency or something just in the field.
Well,
Like-
okay. When you put it that way, all right, I'll agree, because ultimately that's kind of what I did. My third year of law school were clinics.
Mm-hmm.
I
clinics, yeah,
interned at the county attorney's office.
Mm-hmm.
I also did a lawyering theory class with one of the big PI lawyers here in town, Chip Harris, and Judge Snyder. And I tried to utilize that third year to learn how to be a lawyer, which I will tell you, law school is still horrible at teaching.
Just awful. Just
But
awful.
interfacing with those lawyers and learning what they do and how they're doing it and why they're doing it, to me was immensely helpful. I mean, shout out to Scott Palumbo and Nick Walters, probably for giving you
Yeah.
some exposure to here's how we do it as active lawyers.
Right. No, I totally, yeah. Shout out Nick Walters, my mock trial coach. He was awesome. Great guy, good teacher. Shout out to you. But I don't disagree with you. I think the third year, I did use that time too, because I externed here. And then I also took some practical courses. I took Med Mal that year. But I ultimately had a lot of credits. And so I hadn't used, so at ASU, they give you, you can designate, I think it's 10 credits that can be pass fail. I hadn't used any of them. So my last semester at law school, I had, I think 4 classes were pass fail. And I wanted to use the time to study for the bar exam, but also like, I was like, I took all the bar classes I wanted to do. I kind of felt like it was like, I think it's referred to as 3 LOL, where you either are totally checked out or you are taking classes that feel like joke classes. And I wouldn't say the classes I took were joke classes per se, because I had a great professor in 2 of them, Professor Bender, the old dean from ASU. He's a very intelligent man. He has done a lot of great things in the legal community, and he's a great lawyer. But I certainly at that point was apathetic towards the being in law school still. I wanted to get started. I was antsy. I had been a paralegal before. It was just kind of those things where I was like, I think I'm ready. I just want to study and take the bar exam now. But that's different for everybody.
And you know what? That is a good breaking point to take a commercial break.
We'll be right back, folks.
We'll be right back.